welcome back to Flosstube University, hosted by Cross Stitch the Globe. We are a channel about cross stitch. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Allison.
And we created Cross Stitch University to post beginner videos for people who buy the cross stitch patterns from my Etsy shop. However, all are welcome, and by putting them here, we want anyone who can to check them out. If you are new to the world of cross stitch on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. We'll introduce you to the wide world of Flosstube, which is crazy. So we come out with like videos about our own stitching. We come out with like advanced topics and then these beginner tutorials. So yeah, we have fun. All right, so Allison.
We just like to talk.
We love to talk. Allison is a very experienced full cover stitcher, if you can. And she also ends up doing a lot of projects for her husband that he will appreciate. Which
this is for my husband.
So
masters.
Allison has been doing full coverage cross stitch for almost 7 years.
No, I think it's 6. Because I started in 2018.
Okay.
It was like the beginning of 18. So that's 6 years.
So over 6 years.
Over 6 years.
And I've been doing it for almost a year, and I design full coverage. And so between Allison's advanced and my beginner brains, we've come up with a lot of things where it's like, wait a minute, like a lot of questions, and we figured it'd be good to answer them.
Yeah.
So if you are new to the world of full coverage, or if you're new to the world of cross stitch in general, and you bought a pattern where you have to go get your own fabric, you might be like, well, wait a minute.
Or if you bought a kit and you're like, you know what, that seems a little...
I don't like this fabric.
Yeah, a little weird. Let's try something else. And there you go.
So this video is just about the best fabric for full coverage cross stitch. Is it Aida? Is it Evenweave? Is it linen? Is it situational? Is it personal preference? Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. But we're gonna talk about the pros and cons of each, and then you can decide what one you want to use. So the first most common for full coverage is Aida. We have
this was stitched on Aida.
And we have
see it.
I don't know. Where did I put it? And Aida is
and we have other videos about what Aida is.
Yeah. Although we ended up also we were gonna do a long explainer video on like what is Aida and what is Evenweave. But then we saw that Erica from Fibers and Floss Canada just posted like a really good explainer on what Aida is. So we don't need to make that one. So I'm going to link to that in the comments if you want to know like the history and like the manufacturing, and that video is very good.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, we'll just skip explaining what the fabrics are because she's going to do that, and we'll just link to them. And then instead we'll skip right to, okay, so of the 3 fabrics, which one should you use for full coverage?
Right.
And
because hopefully you've just gotten a full coverage from Cross Stitch the Globe.
Or
anyone.
Or anywhere. Actually, my Aida is, I can't find it. Can you grab a piece of Aida?
Yeah.
Is that not Aida?
This one is, but it's...
That's fine. This is not a full coverage piece, but you can see what the Aida looks like. It's got nice big holes. And the number one advantage
very easy to see
of why people love doing full coverage on Aida is because full coverage, you don't see the fabric, right? So you don't need pretty fabric if no one's ever going to see your fabric. So you can... all of the downsides to stitching on dark fabric or stitching on really beautiful but like maybe tinier fabric, whatever, you can forget about all that because no one's ever going to see it. So you can just go to, well, what's the easiest one for me to see? Mm-hmm. I can see Aida. Mm-hmm. Now, within Aida, there's different counts. You can decide if you want the holes to be bigger or smaller based on what you want your picture to look like. We talked about that before. But just the number one benefit of Aida is it's very easy to see. It's
much easier to see.
You don't need to count because you're going to be stitching
one
over, or you're going to be stitching usually two over one.
2 over 1, but it depends on your
But at least you're going to be, however many threads you're choosing to use based on your fabric count, you're going to be going over one hole.
Much less counting. I prefer it so much.
I guess technically counting, but like not
less counting.
Yeah. So like if you need to skip 3 stitches to the next stitch, you're skipping 3 stitches. You're not skipping 6 threads and having to do that.
Yeah.
What's another? Allison is a primarily Aida stitcher. What's another reason you love Aida?
I love Aida because it looks the same every time. Yeah. Like a stitch is a stitch is a stitch, which I have not come across in linen, which is the other one that I have tried it. And I haven't tried a full coverage on it, but I've tried dense patches on it. And I prefer that it's predictable. And I kind of like the stiffness, which is a different thing. It's stiffer. And for me, I prefer that.
And actually, our next video is gonna be about the difference versus like, do you want a hard Aida or stiff,
or a softer
crunchy,
one,
or do you want like a soft Aida? And when you might want differences in personal preference and things to think about. But you can get it in a range of like hard to soft, and then you also can make it softer. You can also, it's the cheapest. Like you can buy
It is the cheapest.
a giant blanket of it for much cheaper than you can pretty linen or Evenweave.
You can get it gridded. You can get it pre-gridded, and if you're doing a full coverage, that might be a really good benefit.
Yeah, you can get Lugana pre-gridded, but you can't get linen pre-gridded. Yeah, but like it's like a 25 count. I think it's not like all the counts of. You can wash it. Like if you're using like a pretty but like over dyed fabric, it might be one where you're not allowed to wash it at the end of your project. Full coverages tend to take a long time, but full coverages done on Aida with DMC tend to be washable at the end of that process.
They're absolutely washable. If it's a standard color, if it's not like a specialty one, but if just white Aida, standard blue, whatever, it washes. It washes without any colors.
And then you just got to worry about like I've seen horror stories of DMC running, but there's ways to avoid it. So, but the Aida itself,
I've done it for 6 years, 6+ years.
But the Aida itself is washable, and we'll talk in future videos about like washing.
Don't scare me. Oh my gosh.
It's my favorite part of the video, and Allison's like, oh. All right. So those are the pros of Aida. What are some of the cons of Aida?
Sometimes it's too stiff and it makes your hands hurt. That's about it.
That's true.
And like if you're dealing with a larger piece of fabric, that stiffness is hard to control when on the parts you're not stitching, you know,
you have to like
trying to wrangle it in like what do you do
it
with
doesn't
it?
fold up as neatly and easily as excess linen and excess Lugana to like I just roll mine up and clip, and it's kind of like easier, but
it's just a little bit more bulky. It's harder.
Yeah. I think another downside is it in the non-full coverage world, it doesn't look quite as pretty as some of the like, and like even like plain linens don't look as nice as some of the overdyed. So like when you're not going to cover the entire thing, sometimes you want your fabric to either be really beautiful or to be very plain and not take away from your stitching. And so the Aida can be kind of rough and distracting, but in full coverage, that's not an issue. And in full coverage too, like the one reason you see people switch, I think, from Aida to Lugana is size, right? So like if you have a picture that on 14 count would be this big, but you want it to be this big, you got to keep going until your stitches are smaller and smaller. And at some point you're going to go out of Aida because Aida really only goes up to a 22.
Yeah. Very.
So,
which is tiny.
Which is tiny.
Which is very
But
small.
there are people who want to do, full coverage on 25 count, whenever one. They want to do it on 40 count, whenever one.
Or if you wanted to have the option of specialty stitches, not so easy with Aida.
Yeah, and you don't see as many specialty stitches in full coverage, but you do sometimes see half stitches and quarter stitches, but not like, you don't see a lot of French knots in full coverage.
Right.
Actually, you do in the Dimensions kits.
Do you?
Yeah. I think it was Phoebe from Moonshine Stitchery was doing a dimension kit, and all the snow at the end were all French knots. And I'd be like, oh, I guess there's not snow in this picture. But yeah, so there are specialty stitches, and when you're talking about specialty stitches where you would want to do it over one thread, well, on like Lugana, you want to do it over one thread, but on Aida, you're doing it over one thread is the equivalent of 2 threads. It's not as easy to put your needle in the middle, but
it's not that hard. Especially the softer your Aida is, the easier it is to.
You can do it because really those are made of multiple strands, so you can pierce them. It's just a little bit. It's not quite as like even looking in terms of like.
Yeah.
You're not going to get as like consistent, but you can do it.
Yeah.
All right. So those are the pros and cons of Aida. Let's talk about the pros and cons of Evenweave. In our last video, we talked about like all the different kinds of Evenweave in the world. Let's just go with Lugana for example, but there's a lot and there are a lot of different mixes of things. Okay. So let's say like somebody wants to switch from like a 22 count Aida and now they want to do it on a 25 count Lugana. And they want to do it because they want their picture to be even smaller, or it's usually like because they want their picture to be even smaller. Like not, like they want to get it so it can actually fit on the wall.
100,000 stitches, just as small as possible.
And the pixelation too, like when you talk about a picture and you make it smaller and smaller, the pixelation goes away and goes away. So like maybe it looks kind of pixelated at 14 count, but when you get it down to 25 count, it doesn't. But what are some other like pros and cons of using Lugana for full coverage?
So I guess besides smaller, which would be a plus, unlike linen, there are no slubs in it, so you don't have to worry about your stitches being uneven.
Yeah, so like when you're talking about Lugana and you're talking about like 25 or 28 count, then the competitor really isn't Aida anymore. You're really choosing between
Evenweave.
Yeah, so you've decided you want it to be smaller than Aida
Right.
can handle, and now you're choosing linen versus Evenweave. And if you're talking about trying to make a picture, those slubs can affect your picture.
It will. It will affect your picture. Your stitches will be different sizes. You know, your pictures will look different.
Yeah, and the threads will look slightly different. And also, like, linen is a lot more expensive than Evenweave.
It is a lot more expensive.
And no one's going to see your fabric. So what's the point in paying for the difference?
Well, but it's possible to do it on linen.
Yeah, like a lot of samplers will have like a big house or something, like where there are areas that are full coverage, and you could see like, oh, actually, I could totally do one of my little full coverages on a little piece of linen. It'd be totally fine.
Like if you had a
because some of my full
use
coverages are smaller than the houses on some of these samplers. So if that's all you had, yeah, it's not like you can't do it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a waste of a pretty fabric, a more refined fabric to hide it. It's kind of like
just more expensive. So.
And it's not like saying like, use your fine china every day because life is short, because you're not really going to have
You won't even see it.
You won't see it, but it's also like not going to be a more fun experience doing full coverage on linen than Lugana. They stitch very similarly.
I don't know. I don't think they stitch that similarly. Like I can tell a big difference between my 40 count linen and my 25 count.
And you don't think it's just that you're not using a 40 count Verdal Evenweave?
No, I think they're different.
I don't like the look of
they're
Lugana
more
very
synthetic,
much.
which I like.
Yeah. See, so when I can see the piece, I don't like the look of the Lugana as much, but the actual feeling of stitching it, I think is slightly better.
More like Aida.
So, my heart always says if I can see the fabric, I want it on linen, no matter what, at all costs. But I need some Aida fabric, like some Aida projects just to have. But then if full coverage, I want the easiest, cheapest fabric, because you're also going to buy giant thread packs.
It's your canvas, but literally it's not going to be there. It's not part of the art.
Yeah. So so what we're saying is you could do a full coverage on linen, especially like a small full coverage. You could do it. We don't know why you'd want to, like, it's kind of a waste of materials in our opinion. But if I had an unlimited supply of linen and I had 0 pieces of Lugana and I needed to do it on 28 count, well, you would just do it because it'd be silly to go buy,
I was gonna say, I'm so like frugal. Like I want to use everything I have. So if it's between this 25 count Lugana and going and spending, extra money, I might just grab Lugana.
But would you grab the linen if there was?
I would not grab the linen.
Allison does not. I love stitching on
linen.
linen. Allison does not like stitching on linen at all. I love it.
Nope. And I have projects on linen that I will finish, and then I just started another one on that same.
Oh yeah, I do that.
So I've extended my sentence.
But it is funny. Allison's been stitching for long enough that she's just like, I don't want to switch. And because I was new and I was like, oh, the world of Flosstube, there's all these pretty ones. I was like, not. So it just kind of depends on like how you learn and what you start.
Yeah. Yours is like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. I'm like, Aida works. It is easy. It feels good.
It's funny. Like for me, it's like a lot of people think of Lugana as like the best of both worlds. And to me, Lugana is the worst of both worlds because you don't get the refinement of linen and you don't get the ease quite of Aida because you still have to count.
I think it looks more refined than Aida, but...
I think it looks more refined than Aida, but to me, it's like, well, if I'm going to see it, I'm going to skip to linen. And if
I think it looks fine.
I'm not going to see it, I'm going to do Aida. And so I have some Lugana that I'm like, I don't know when I will ever stitch on these. Like, I don't know when I would ever assign them to a project over Aida or linen. Because to me, the benefits of linen and the benefits of Aida are so clear and distinct and different.
Absolutely.
And the Luganas I have are like prettier ones. There are a couple pieces of like pretty Lugana where I wouldn't put a full coverage.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, like if it was plain white Lugana, I'd be like, okay, well, I'll just do a full coverage, make it a little smaller. But no, this is kind of like.
That is an advantage though, if you want to make it like real teeny tiny.
So we would love to know, like, do you prefer to do your full coverage on Aida, on Lugana, another Evenweave? Is there an Evenweave you like more than Lugana? Are you a Jaslyn girl? Are you a Jovelyn girl?
And if you don't know what that means, go back one video.
And then if you're not subscribed, we'd love if you subscribed. On Monday, we'll come out with either a Flosstube or a Flosstube Extra because we're recording these in the future in the past to you. And then every Thursday we're going to come out with another beginner tutorial. And then if you made it to this part of the video,
we should always pick this.
We should pick
before
these before
this
we
moment.
we
never think about it until we're saying
leave
it.
a square emoji for a little Aida square.
Aida square, leave it, do it.
That'll be our secret language that you made it this far. And if you did make it this far, thank you so much. And we're done.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.